Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's 9:30 here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Erin Kovac, and I'm the Marketing Director for Higher Level, a workforce management resource. Today, you joined our Workplace Excellence webinar entitled Effective Communication, Connection, and Reducing Workplace Turnover. I think this is a topic that we all can learn from, and I am excited to get going. Donna White with Legacy Consulting Services will begin momentarily. I do want to talk about a couple things before we get started. This call will last close to an hour. Everybody on the webinar today, you are set up in listen-only mode, but there will be an opportunity to ask questions. If you have a question or anything you would like to say, please feel free to use the chat function in your GoToWebinar, and I will relay that information to Donna. So let's go ahead and get started. Donna, I will turn it over to you, and I thank you for presenting with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Erin. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Donna White with Legacy Consulting Services, and I'm the owner of our company, and we focus primarily on healthcare consulting and revenue cycle management, but we also work with companies on leadership development and process improvement. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end, but I'm happy to be able to present to you guys about effective communication and reducing turnover. I think, as Erin mentioned, this is a topic that is definitely needed, and certainly almost every business is faced with this. And I do have, I think I might have just a little bit of delay, so I apologize. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. I'll make sure I control the slides a little bit more. So I do have a slide here that just explains a little bit about who I am. I have a 24-year career in healthcare administration and operations. My husband's name is David. I have a 24-year-old daughter and a stepdaughter who's 19. I was the former VP of Revenue Cycle Management for about 650 physical therapy clinics, and then decided to start my own business about 5 years ago and focus on these areas, and it just has been such a passion of mine and a huge success, and just very excited about the future. We've been very successful in working with our clients and increasing their net revenue, improving their processes, and ultimately engaging their employees, because I think we all know that employee engagement ultimately ties in with all of those areas that I've just mentioned. So I wanted to start off asking a question. What mistake do you feel that companies most make in managing their employees? If we look at this pie chart here, we will see that it's a lack of communication is really the #1 area. 41% of the mistakes really related to employee engagement and turnover all stem from communication. We're going to get into that certainly in more detail, but the next area is the lack of recognition and praise. Employees are really looking for the recognition. It's not always about the pay, but it's more so about the recognition and the praise that they receive for the job that they're doing, and really the feedback. And then the next area is the lack of training or educational opportunities. And then you see the other areas there: lack of flexibility in work schedule, the lack of authority to be given to them, or basically empowerment to do their job. So really, we're going to focus on the top 2 areas, the lack of communication and the lack of recognition. So I thought this was just a funny slide that I wanted to share with you guys today. We know that communication is a problem, but the company is not going to discuss it with the employees. And I just think that is so true. A lot of times the companies may realize that, you know, this is a huge issue for us, but, you know, we're not going to talk with our employees about it. We're not going to do exit interviews. We're not going to conduct, you know, quarterly updates with our employees, and so we continue to struggle because that communication does not improve. And then just another one here. I thought this one was really hilarious as it relates to a boardroom. What if, and I know this sounds kooky, we actually decided to communicate with our employees, right? It's a novel idea. Maybe we should consider doing this. And how many times have we seen that happen sort of behind closed doors when problems or issues are being discussed and we realize that it is surrounding communication? So when we look at turnover, we want to talk a little bit about the reasons for turnover. the cost of turnover, and then how do we maximize staff retention in order to enhance the business profitability? Because again, it all ties into the processes, the engagement of the employee, and ultimately, every time an employee leaves, it costs the business more and more money for training and so many other areas. So why do employees leave? So if we look at staff turnover, we know that it is disruptive, it's expensive, and it affects team morale. We said that. In a study of 12,000 employees, we found that, and of course not we, but this is a study that we've researched, found that people will leave a company and go to another company for the following reasons. They want to leave the company and go to another one because of exciting work and challenges, career growth. And how many of us have interviewed employees and they say, you know, what are you looking for in an employer? What are you looking for in an employee relationship or in the culture? And oftentimes what they say is, you know, I'm looking for stability. I'm looking for growth. I'm looking for, you know, teamwork. Those are typically the top three things that I hear in interviewing. And the same thing is true when employees leave. If they're not being challenged, if they're not seeing growth opportunities, the ability to learn and develop within the current company, or if they're not in a teamwork atmosphere, then those are the top three reasons that they will leave the company and go somewhere else. And ultimately, a lot of times that does stem from communication. I always like to recommend to employers that one way to find out about how you're doing, especially when you know, let's say your turnover rate is around 20 to 25%. Maybe you don't even know what that number is, but if your turnover is high, start conducting exit interviews and asking these questions. And we will provide a PDF document of some of these slides. I won't be able to produce all of them for you, but like this one, for instance, I can give you this slide at the end of the presentation. But these are some of the exit interview questions that I feel are very helpful. Is the job that you're doing what you expected based on the information we gave you during the interview? If your interview process is not detailed, explaining the responsibilities of the job, coming to the interview very organized in a manner to really explain what the potential employee will be doing in their new role, then maybe they come into the position thinking it was one thing and leave feeling as though it was something else. And I know we've all experienced that before. That's an important question to know so that you can do a better job on the front end with interviewing. Another question to ask is, what additional information should we be giving new employees regarding the scope of job? So really, what does that onboarding process look like? How organized is it? What training, you know, is available? What are the best aspects of the job? What were the best aspects? What did you enjoy the most about the job that you were working in? What aspects would you like to see improved? Were you supported with a good induction and initial training? That again goes back to the onboarding process. What advice would you give to the next person in your role? What would you tell them, you know, or some of the challenges that you experienced? And what types of candidates do you think are best suited to our culture? Because we all need to know what our culture is. Every business has a different culture, and so we need to know what that culture is so that we can adequately describe that to potential candidates, and also know if there is any, you know, anything that needs to change in the culture. And then again, the last question that I have here is, if we were to really rethink this role and the responsibilities within the role, what suggestions could you make to us? There's a ton of other questions that you can certainly ask in an exit interview. I think it's good to have the employees, as they're leaving, sort of detail this out. Some of the questions can be yes and no with comments, but I think getting detailed feedback is extremely important to evaluating how you can make changes in the business and reduce turnover. The cost of turnover, I think we all know it's very costly. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but a study found that the turnover cost for every employee who leaves basically ranges from anywhere from 90% to 200% of their annual salary, because you've got to go through the interviewing process. If you add up all the hours, both in interviewing, screening, background checks, references, you know, onboarding, advertisement for the position, it's very, very, very costly to have turnover. And when you get into a highly skilled position, it can cost up to 5 times as much. So that's very, very costly to the business. So to really assess the cost of replacing an employee, you really have to consider these specific areas. The business is lost when the role is vacant. So in other words, are you going to lose the business because that role is vacant and there's no one to support that role, to support that client, to really adequately ensure that things are handled properly? It's going to also be a disruption to the existing team because they've got to pull that extra workload. There may be work that is even put on hold until a replacement is found. You could possibly lose customers and business opportunities because of relationships being severed, because there wasn't a good transition plan. Maybe there wasn't good communication to that potential either client or, depending on the size of the organization, to the internal team of what was actually occurring with when the turnover actually took place. There's also the loss of shared knowledge. If you don't have a good onboarding process, then the knowledge that has been shared with the person that is leaving potentially could be watered down if you don't have a good training program to ensure that the new person coming on board learns exactly the same information and is properly trained to move into that role. So let's talk a little bit about what do we need to do to maximize staff retention. So I really find that in my business and in managing large teams, I managed a team of about 450 employees in the physical therapy company that I was mentioning to you in my bio. And when I managed that team, they were in 8 states. We had a team in Montgomery, Alabama of 125 people. We had a team in Colorado of about 75. We had a team in Indiana that was about 120 or so. And then we had a few other offices. So as you can imagine, having local managers on site, managing staff retention, and really trying to make sure that we had a good communication protocol between that many offices was a critical part of being a success for a large organization. So we had to put some specific things in place to make sure that we were helping our employees on a regular basis to work in and to find their passion. Do we have them in the right role? Are they enjoying what they're doing? Do they see the opportunity for growth? Do they see personal challenge and growth on a daily basis? So some of the questions that you can ask is, what skills do you have that you're currently not using? And this is the question that would be asked of the individual employee when you're sitting with them, or when an HR director maybe is sitting with them. What skills do you have? What is your passion? What is it that you're not currently able to use on a daily basis that if you were able to do those things, you would feel energized and passionate and excited about coming to work on a daily basis? What areas would you like to see increased responsibility? And that ties in directly. One is more so about the skill set, and one's about the level of responsibility, being empowered and having the responsibility to carry out those tasks on a daily basis. And then how would you like to see your job change? And that may sound sort of basic, but having those conversations are extremely meaningful to the staff, and just them feeling that you truly care and that you want to directly align with them with what they're good at and what they're passionate about. And also being able to train them in the areas that they're maybe not so good. We all recognize that, there are parts of our job that we may not enjoy. So, but if we enjoy 80% of it, we can overlook maybe the other 20% because we recognize that. But we need to focus on that job enrichment. What can we do for our employees to make them passionate about coming to work every day, to make it seem like a family environment, and to help them truly find their passion? So I think I've already alluded to this, but a major cause of turnover is workplace boredom. They're either not satisfied and fulfilled in their job, they're bored with what they're doing, they don't feel empowered, they don't like the culture, or they're not really properly trained. And then the communication ultimately it all stems from that lack of communication. So I would encourage that those conversations really should happen with the employees. At least what we like to do is when we onboard a new employee, for the first couple of weeks, of course, it's usually training. 30 days, we like to do an assessment. How are things going? What do we need to improve? What other training do you need? And then always, of course, some kind of 90-day assessment. It's not so much focused around just evaluating the employee, but it's also focused around evaluating us as the employer. How are we doing? So if we also think about maximizing staff retention through career opportunities, what type of career opportunities do you have for your employees in the organization, and do the employees understand that career path? What I like to do is to really create a path that people, for instance, in our world, we do a lot of medical billing and revenue cycle consulting. So if I use medical billing as an example, someone might come into our organization with less experience or no experience in medical billing, but they could pretty easily be trained to move into a billing role in a matter of probably a couple of weeks. Then they master that job, and their next path for their career would be payment posting. They move on to learn the responsibilities of posting payments and what's involved. Then the next step may be working accounts receivable, where they're actually calling insurance companies. The next step might be a team lead. The next step might be a manager, and so forth. And we create that career path and have frequent conversations with the employees so that they understand what opportunities are available to them. If they have good attitudes, they're working hard, they're passionate about what they do, they're going above and beyond, then there's opportunities for them to grow. So letting them know that there is those career opportunities and what that means to them will also greatly, greatly improve employee engagement. So discussing their future openly and frequently is important, involving them as you discuss their abilities, choices, and ideas. And really, they don't expect you to have all the answers, but they do want you to listen. And I think that's what we're talking about here with communication. Listening to them and what they're saying, and also offering your perspective is very important. And then giving them feedback. One of the things in the evaluation process that we always try to do is it can be lengthy, but through the evaluations, when you give them specific examples of what they're doing well, how they're doing well, and how that relates to their future growth opportunities, it really is beneficial to the employee succeeding. I like to, as I see things that the employee's doing well or maybe not so well, whether it's in an email or whether it's just a Word document, type it up, put it in their employee file or a separate file that you keep as the manager, maybe not the official personnel file, but keep that, and that helps you when it comes to evaluation time, or whether it's a 90-day discussion with a new employee, you're able to give them specific feedback. And that goes a long way towards increasing that employee engagement. Take the time out to have in-depth discussions with them about how the industry is changing. I know in healthcare, healthcare is changing drastically, has changed over the last 5 to 10 years and is continuing to change. And just having the staff to understand what those changes are, what it means to them, and what it means to their future growth is extremely important. I know I recently did a presentation at South University, and these are adult students going back to school that are in multiple different areas, multiple different fields, healthcare, business administration, legal, etc. But just explaining to them and hearing from them how the fields are changing and how the roles are changing, and different things for them to be considering as they want to grow their career, I think was extremely, exciting to them, just to hear, what is ahead. So I want to also talk just a little bit about maximizing staff retention through communication, which is really where we started from. And what we've also been saying is, continue to keep the employee informed. Make the employee feel part of the organization. Let them know what is happening. And I think this is just an area that we all really struggle. We get so busy in our day-to-day jobs. Our calendars are full, both at work and at home, and we tend to lose sight of the very important aspect of effective communication. One of the mastermind groups that we hold quite frequently is about a John Maxwell book called Everyone Communicates Till You Connect. We all communicate on a daily basis. We're talking, we're speaking, but are we really connecting? And we're going to cover that in just a small amount of detail on a couple of slides here. But the connection part is really what's important too. Not that we're just talking about things, not that we're just sending emails, but that we're really connecting and capturing people's emotions and attention. So the information sharing is certainly important, and it's critical during periods of change. So as you think about if it's a downsizing situation, a merger and acquisition, a transition that's going to be occurring potentially with the client or with the company, if the employees are worried and they don't know what's going on, and it just tends to spread everything from gossip to dissatisfaction, increased turnover, and all of those things, which you're very well aware of. But if there's more planning on the front end to really think through, if I was the person that was the one that didn't know and needed to know, what would I want to know? What would be important to me? How would I want that message to be relayed? And how would it make me feel more comfortable about the situation? So the planning, I think, is always what it comes down to as well when we're talking about communicating with our employees about their work or about any change, taking the time to plan it out and ensure that the proper communication is there so that the employee doesn't worry about their job security. So the role of the manager, of course, is always to help the employee to look into the future and help them know exactly what steps they need to take to be proactive in their development and in their career advancement. Those are keys, again, to engaging the employee and really making them feel comfortable through effective communication in the organization. They want to know things like what is the company's direction? What is the company's goal? We've already talked about what is the industry's future? Where are we going? From here, what do we see ahead? On the heels of the election, obviously we all know, we've got some changes ahead, and that trickles down into all of our organizations in various industries in different ways. And like I said, in healthcare, there's a lot of changes going on. Doctors' offices and hospitals are seeing reduced reimbursement. They're looking to organizations like our consulting business and many others to help them improve processes, efficiencies, engage employees, and ultimately improve the bottom line. And that's what they want to know is, the employees, they realize that it's affecting their career and their future, and what role do they play versus what role does the employer play. The employee's bottom line, with more information, more communication, transparency, and planned communication, feel more confident in their future within the company and ultimately stay longer and are more engaged. So if we talk about communication, what really is effective communication in the workplace? We know it improves productivity, it improves morale, it improves turnover, or reduces turnover, I should say. We need to clarify the company policies. I think it's always good to, whether you have monthly staff meetings, whether you produce an employee newsletter, which I think can be extremely valuable depending on the size of the organization, certainly, for them to know what's going on within the organization. It could be large team meetings, daily huddles. There's all different types of ways that you can provide updates to employees, but being very intentional about doing that and figuring out more effective ways to communicate within the organization. And then encouraging their feedback, handle conflict quickly. Wow. This one I can't say enough about. Whenever I'm made aware of a conflict, whether it's a misunderstanding or conflict between two employees, I always want to try to handle that conflict as quickly as possible. Because we all know if conflicts are not handled quickly, they fester and they become infectious throughout the organization. And handling it quickly means taking a step back to recognize what's going on, but then pulling that person or multiple individuals together to try to discuss and work out a solution. More times than not, communication is the lack of communication drives conflict. In a family, in a home, in an extended family, in a school, between a parent and a teacher, whatever, we all know conflicts arise, and usually they result out of miscommunication. Conflict resolution is not an area where most people enjoy being. Most people do not know how to resolve conflict, maybe don't know how to go about it, they're afraid of it, they shy away from it. So the reality is, if we can handle conflict quickly and get to the bottom of a positive solution, let's work through this, let's talk through this, you know, how did you feel, why did you feel this way, what can we do to work things out, you know, let's put this behind us, just all of those kind of things that you can do to deal with conflict. That is a critical part of becoming an effective communicator within a company. And ultimately that may involve HR, depending on your company policy. When a conflict arises, making them aware, and you may have specific policies on that. If you don't, you know, it would be a good idea to. But any type of, whether it's a complaint or a conflict, those things need to be dealt with because ultimately it affects the entire team in a huge, huge way, and I just can't say enough about that. Holding weekly meetings, I think that's really important. You know, maybe if it's not weekly, depending on the nature of your business and, you know, what is actually occurring. If it's a really, really small company and everybody's seeing each other on a daily basis, maybe weekly meetings are not necessary. It might be monthly meetings. But I think meetings, you need to be effective, but they also need to happen as much as possible without cancellation, because it sends a message to the employees that it's not important otherwise. And I realize that other priorities do get in the way, but if we can put those things in the forefront and make sure that they happen, it's going to go a long way towards effective communication and improved morale within the company. So let's talk about maximizing staff retention through connection. So communication, you know, we all communicate. If we get in, we could spend 2 or 3 hours just talking about how to communicate effectively, how to manage conflict, how to engage employees through effective communication. I really wanted to hit some of the highlights today and just get you guys really thinking about how important communication is towards the results and the bottom line of the business, and think about ways internally that you could improve your communication, but then also think about the connection. Because the majority of employees working full-time spend more time in the office working with their employees and their coworkers and their teams than they do, you know, in their waking hours at home. You know, that doesn't include, of course, sleep time. But having an environment where people can truly connect and feel they're a part of a team, that's really what everybody wants. Connections are a major reason why people stay with a company. They feel like, I have my employees say it all the time, I feel like this is my family, this is my extended family. Some, you know, may even say I'm closer to this team than I am to my own family, which is really sad, but that is the reality. If we can create that kind of culture where people connect, they want to come to work, and no, they don't want to, you know, maybe work their lives away, but they connect in a way that they enjoy the team that they're with. Managers need to give attention to really strengthening those bonds between people in their team, and there's all different kinds of ways that you can do that. We do some things like once a month we may just, I don't know, we might order in pizza and play some type of team building game. We also do something called the leadership game that's very engaging around culture and opportunities and just leadership and those things. There's all different types of ways that you can bring your team together to strengthen those bonds. But the bottom line is that you just have to be intentional and actually do it. Employees do need to link with others to get their jobs done effectively. 90% of the time, if not 99% of the time, employees have to work together as a team to be successful in a particular goal. So they're not doing it alone. You know, none of us are in a silo working all on our own all the time and can take 100% of the credit for everything that we do to be successful. It's all about teamwork and working together. We always need to be asking the staff, who else in the company do you need to be liaisoning with or liaising with to optimize your role? Who do you need to be working with, teaming up with to optimize your role? Who is it that you need a better relationship with? Who is it that you need to be working with to optimize your role and what you do on a daily basis? So the relationships with others help employees get their work done. It gives them more insight, and ultimately that translates to productivity. Another area where we really focus in our organization is on productivity and accountability. And so I think that through effective communication, good teamwork and connections with the employees, ultimately that translates into productivity, employee engagement, and satisfied employees who want to stay with the organization for a long time and ultimately grow and raise their level of awareness within the company. As the employees are then linked to other functions, their knowledge and skills will grow, and they're more than likely willing to stay. So I guess at this point of where we are in the discussion, I would like to take a moment to ask, and for those of you that are on the chat, if you could just respond to Erin and say, out of the things that we've discussed, what do you feel like in your organization probably is most important? We went back to that initial slide. Is it communication? Is it teamwork? What is it that you feel like, and maybe it's not necessarily just even what's most important, but what's your number one challenge at this point? Would a few of you take a moment to respond to that question? What do you feel like your number one challenge is in your organization? And Erin, I'm going to let you tell me when we've got a few responses.
All right, I'm watching out. All right, we have a response. They say their number one challenge for us is lack of two-way communication between management and employees.
Absolutely. So the person that that indicated that, what do you feel like is the resolution to that particular issue? What do you feel like the number one thing is that management could do to improve in that area? Do we have any other responses in the chat to the challenge, Erin?
No, we do not yet.
Okay. So while we're waiting on that response, I don't know if the session is delayed a little bit, but it's not allowing me to move forward to the next slide.
Give it another try.
Okay.
I see your mouse moving. There we go.
Okay. Whoops. Now it's moving fast. Okay, Erin, you can just interrupt me when we have that response. But I completely agree. That is definitely a huge issue in most organizations out there. So when we look at relationships, when we're asked, what is the one single characteristic that is most needed by those in leadership positions? The ability to work with people, the ability to relate to people. And Teddy Roosevelt said, the most important single ingredient to the formula of success is knowing how to get along with people. So it all goes back to communication, connection, and conflict resolution, right? So Teddy Roosevelt said the most important single ingredient to the formula of success is knowing how to get along with people. I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard of Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Probably many of you may have even gone through a Dale Carnegie course at one time or another. I think the key to that is you can go through the course, you can read the book, but then taking the steps to put those steps into action really is the key. And being intentional about doing that on a daily basis is even more so. It's difficult for us, but that's the only way to really learn how to successfully get along with people. In some actual studies of leadership in American business, I know it seems mind-boggling, but it has been proven that the average executive spends 3/4 of his working day dealing with people. So success is really 87, and this is through Stanford research, okay? 87% is about people, 13% is about product. And that's almost mind-boggling, I think, to all of us to really think, oh my goodness, is that really possible? Because what we've been talking about is onboarding an employee, training them, making sure we communicate with them. You know, so we think of it more when we talk in those terms of, oh, okay, we've got to make sure they understand the processes, the systems, the technology. But it's really more about the people, the relationships, the communication, and the connection. And so I think if we all keep that in the forefront of our minds, then we'll ultimately be much more successful in dealing with people, but in ultimately getting more employee engagement within our organization. So connecting is all about others. We've said that several times, but I just wanted to put this up there because John Maxwell, I'm a part of the John Maxwell team. We focus a lot on leadership development. And he says there's no I in team, but there is an M and an E, and that spells me. Zig Ziglar says if you first help people get what they want, they will help you get what you want. And how true that is. If we help people, they will in turn help us because they know it's about them and not about us. And in today's society, I think our tendency is to be very selfish in nature. It's all about me, what I want, what I need, it's what's in it for me kind of a thought process. But if we turn that around and say, what can I do for someone else? How can I connect with them today? How can I help them today? How can I be a better team member? Ultimately, that translates to a much more satisfied you, so to speak. You're satisfied, you're seeing improved communications and improved connections in all the different areas that we've just discussed. So communicating and connecting with influence, I think, is definitely a challenge. So if we look at it in 3 different buckets here for just a minute, high achievers, average achievers, and low achievers. So I want to start with the low achievers because I know this is an area we struggle with, and the low achievers tend to fall into one of these 3 buckets. They're preoccupied with their own security, and oftentimes that comes from insecurity. They show a basic distrust of their subordinates. Somebody that's subordinate to them, or even a coworker, or even management for that matter, but they just show a basic distrust. And they do not seek advice. They want to do it all on their own. And they never succeed beyond that lower achievement level. Then we move to average. And average, they're more concentrated typically on production. Okay, what can I get done today? They focus more on their own status. Again, it's more so what's in it for me, but they're still very reluctant to seek advice from those, under them or even around them, so to speak. In the John Maxwell world, John says, if any of you have ever listened to him before or heard Minute with Maxwell or any of those things, he says that average is a cuss word. And the reason he says that is because average, he wants to be just average. Nobody's going to come up to you and say, oh, I'm just planning on being average today. Or when they're in an interview with you and you ask them a question, oh no, I'm not excellent at that. I'm just average. The problem is we don't really want to be average, but what we do on a daily basis and how we set our schedules, how intentional we are about our relationships and our connections, how we determine our priorities and our focus on growth is really most of the time just average. But if we look at those that are really high achievers, going above and beyond, exceeding expectations, they care about people as well as profit. So like for a business owner, and I don't know how many business owners we have on the call with us today, but for a business owner, for instance, business owners are very, very interested in profit. We work with doctors' offices and hospitals and dental groups, and they're very, CEOs and doctor partners and healthcare organizations, they're very, very interested in profit. But those doctors that really care about people, most of them got into medicine because they do care about people and they care about helping people. If they care about people as well as the profit, that comes out in the way they treat people, the way they handle their patient care, And ultimately, those people are typically very high achievers. High achievers also view their subordinates optimistically. It's not territorial, it's not competition, but it's we're in this together. They're optimistic. It's more of a positive mindset, and they do seek advice from them, from those under them. So in other words, I think we can all learn from those around us, whether we're a CEO, whether we're an HR director, whether we're a medical biller, whether we're a receptionist, whatever level we're at, we can always learn and grow. And if we can be a high achiever in any one of those roles, if we care about people, if we view those around us in a positive manner, and we're constantly seeking advice from those under us, around us, and above us. I've recently done a series on leadership that talks about leading up, leading down, and leading across. And that really is what this is talking about in some ways. Is, you know, I can lead someone that's above me, I can lead someone that's equal to me, and I can lead someone that's below me. And I can also receive, seek, and implement advice from those around me, because other people have different viewpoints. And so to be a high achiever, these are the areas that I have found and have personally tried to implement in my life to constantly be focused on achieving the most that I possibly can. And I think you guys can see, if we look at it, again, from low to high, and I'm spending a lot of time on this because this is really, really, I think, a critical, it almost summarizes what we're talking about in a lot of different ways of both the organizations and the employees and the connections that we make. The low achiever that's focused on security, sort of a negative attitude of distrust, and more about what's in it for me, versus the average achiever that's focused on what they can produce, but more on their own status and very reluctant still, sort of almost unsure and reluctant to seek others' advice, versus a high achiever who really does care about the bottom line, but also cares about people, and it's a good balance. And then also views their subordinates very optimistically in a positive manner, almost as an equal. We're in this together. You know, let's work through this together, and seeks advice from them, is willing to listen and hear them out. And it's not, okay, I'm the authority and you listen to me and that's what goes. And I think that's really how we can work together to encourage more positive, effective communication and connection throughout our organization. And that truly is leading with influence. So connectors connect on common ground, and that's really what we're saying as well. It's difficult to find common ground with others when the only person you're focused on is yourself. And I think that is so true. I'm going to stay here just on the slide for just a second, but it's so true in many of our organizations that have multiple levels of management. If it becomes just focused on one person's authority, one person's opinion, one person's leadership style even maybe, it's difficult to connect and find that common ground and feel like you're truly a part of a team in an environment like that. So connecting, again, is very, very important. I'm just going to read this one more time. It is difficult to find common ground. How can we relate? How can we find common ground and come to a best solution, whether it's a problem, a go forward plan, whatever it is, to find that common ground with others when the only person you're focused on is yourself. So it goes back to the M and the E. Yes, there's M and E in team, but there's no I in team, right? So we really have to be part of a team and focus on others and not just ourselves. Let me go to this next slide. All right, so connecting is all about others and not ourselves. So why do we focus so much on ourselves and not others? Typically, and this goes from discussions with counselors and psychologists to family members that are struggling in various family situations, it's a lot of times around ego, immaturity, and failure to value others. And insecurity, you know, immaturity and ego, insecurity, and failure to value others. Improving in those areas will take the focus off of ourselves and transition the focus to others and connecting with others. So the 3 connecting questions that we really need to ask ourselves on a daily basis is, and really that others are asking us, do you care for me? Can you help me? And can I trust you? And that trust question is a big one. Now, you may have failed someone before, and they may not feel like they can trust you, or someone else may have failed you, and you may not feel like you can trust them. But it is possible to rebuild that trust and reconnect if there's the desire to. So as part of the John Maxwell team, these 3 questions right here are questions that we are encouraged to ask ourselves and our teams on a daily basis. Do you care for me? Can you help me? And can I trust you? And those questions can be reworded in lots of different ways. Do you feel that I care for you is another way of saying it. Do you feel like I can help you? And do you feel like you can trust me? I mean, that's you asking the other person that question, even in an employee-employer relationship. How do you feel? I mean, can you open up to me? And that's all about, again, resolving conflict. So people, I would make note of this, and I will send you this slide as well. People will not always remember what you said. They'll forget the majority of it. It doesn't matter if you go to see a motivational speaker or if it's a team building workshop or whatever it is. They will not always remember what you said. They will not always remember even what you did specifically. And I want to give you an example of this. How many of you remember what your husband, your wife, significant other, or even your child gave you for Christmas last year? Okay, maybe, possibly. What about the year before? Right? What about the year before that? What about 3 years ago? Do you remember what, one of those individuals gave you for your birthday? Okay, but what about that last trip that you took with a family member, someone that's really important to you, a child, a husband, wife, any one of those individuals I just named? The last family trip you took, you remember those memories, right? You remember those connections. You remember the good times. Those are the things. You remember how it made you feel. So people will not always remember what you said, and they will not always even remember what you did, but they will always, 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 always remember how you made them feel. Whenever I go to an organization to talk to them about any particular topic, it could be about team building, connections, relationships, leadership, how to grow personally and professionally, whatever it is, I always try to be very intentional because I do care a great deal about people. I try to be very intentional in meeting them and remembering their name, looking them in the eye, shaking their hand. If for some reason, this even happened recently where I was speaking to a group. If for some reason I didn't understand their name, I say it back to them just to make sure I can pronounce it correctly, because we all know how important our names are. People want to feel valued, they want to feel important, and they remember how you made them feel. So I think if we really start to think about communication, connection, relationships, and reducing turnover, if we focus on the people in our organization and how we care for them, help them, how they can trust us, and how we make them feel on a daily basis, improving communications and teamwork, being very intentional about it, you will see such a huge lift in your organization, in your team, in your department, whatever your sphere of influence is. And you may not be a business owner, and you may not be someone that supervises, 20 people or whatever, but you do have influence on a daily basis. You can connect, you can find common ground, and you can be influential in another person's life. I encourage you to, no matter the level that you're at within as far as position or title, because to be honest with you, leadership is not about a position or a title. Leadership is about influence and connecting with people. Whatever level you are at as far as that position or title, speak to your upper management. Become involved if you're in upper management with improving communication, developing a plan to let your employees know that you care about them and that they're important. And as we go into these holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, there are so many things that you can do to incorporate what's really just even on this slide here about making people feel remembered and important on a daily basis. That could literally turn your team around if you're struggling with relationships and teamwork. So with that said, I know we are at about 10:20, and actually we are just right on time here because I told Erin that I would try to stop around 10:20 and open it up for questions and answers. And I will put on here just a little bit about what we do so that you can maybe visualize that a little bit more. This is certainly not a sales pitch whatsoever. It's just letting you know a little bit about what we do. Feel free to check us out on our website at legacyconsultingservices.com. But with that said, I'm going to see if anyone has any questions. If you do have any questions, please type into the chat box, and I'm happy to answer those for you. And Erin, just let me know. I know you will if we have any questions coming in. If we don't, there's a couple of other things that I will say before we end today's discussion. I'll give you guys another minute or so.
We have had a couple people ask about copies of the presentation, and I just wanted to reiterate that yes, I'm actually recording the presentation too. We can send out the link to the YouTube video, and Donna will also send out the summarized version of the presentation to you guys.
So to those of you, while we wait just another minute, to those of you who may be struggling in an environment where the communication, the connection, and the turnover, the communication connection is not there, the turnover is high. I would encourage you as you go into these next couple of weeks to really take some time, again, no matter what position you're in, because that really does not matter. You can influence change no matter the position. Take time and just jot down some things that you think would be beneficial to your organization. And really sort of think through what are the tactical items that would be under each one of those. You know, I want to, you know, our turnover is at, let's say, you know, 30% or something, and we want to reduce that to less than 10% over the next year. We need a better onboarding process for employees. We need, you know, a team building workshop to really pull our team together and let them know how much we care about them and spend some time interacting with them and even, you know, asking some of those leadership questions maybe that would engage the team a little bit more and hopefully help them to connect. Or, you know, we need to do something because we've got some conflict going on. We've got, you know, gossip. We've got, you know, backbiting, and it seems like we're not as productive as we need to be, and we need to do something to try to pull, you know, a few key team members together and try to resolve conflict. We all know that it only takes a couple of people, maybe even one person in a team to sort of ruin things for the entire team. And oftentimes if you deal with that one issue and try to work with that person and see if there's anything you can do to try to improve that relationship, you know, improve hopefully the attitude and connect and do, there's a lot of things you can do in that regard. Then that may, in and of itself, it may fix the problem. But there are just so many things. I can go through a list of probably 100 different ways that you can truly improve communication, which ultimately translates to better connection, and then hopefully, you know, focusing on that team building as well. Take some time to just write down some things. And the beauty is, I think, in doing that, when you're very intentional about thinking through it and what it would do to your organization, if you start to even implement just a few of those, you know, a couple here and there, you're going to see things change. The other thing I would encourage you to do is also an employee survey. If your company has not done an employee survey, there are so many different ways that you can do that that are relatively simple and not cost prohibitive at all. You know, you could certainly do it with just, sorry. I apologize. I thought I had all of those turned off. You can certainly do that with just a Word document and a survey, but there's other ways that it can be completely anonymous. using SurveyMonkey and, Google Docs and other ways. But that's a good way also. The thing that you have to realize with employee surveys, though, depending on the responses that you receive, you do need to be able to get back to the employees and let them know the overall results and what the company is doing to develop a proactive plan to be able to deal with that. And then the employees need to start to see that change. Otherwise, it's not meaningful at all just to get the information and do nothing about it. So I think that's it. I am so, again, pleased and excited to have been with you guys today to share on what is a very passionate topic for me about relationship connections and reducing turnover and improving the workplace. And Erin, do we have any questions at all?
Donna, there are no questions, so I think we're good. We did have a couple people reply. Thank you very much, and they thought it was a great presentation and spot on for what they were hoping to hear today. So great, and I appreciate everyone spending their morning with us, and hopefully you took some tools back to your team, and we will be sending out the PowerPoint and also the URL for the recorded presentation if you'd like to take a look at that at a later time. Thank you, Donna. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.